When I was growing up, my dad lived in a house that was built in the early 1900s. I had tons of paranormal experiences in this house, but this one freaked me out the most because it was the only time I had physically seen something in the house. I was about 14 years old at the time. My dad and his girlfriend had just switched the house from cable TV to Fire Sticks, and I didn't have one in my room yet, so I'd watch TV in my little brother's room when he wasn't in there. My brother was 4 at the time. This night, he was sleeping downstairs in our grandma's room, so I was in his room watching TV, when suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black figure about the height of my brother standing in the doorway. Thinking it's him, I say, "Richard, why are you awake right now?" And as I went to look towards the door, the figure quickly turned, and I heard the sound of running down the stairs. Thinking he was just playing around, I looked at my phone and saw it was 1 a.m., so I decided to go to bed. I shut off his TV and lights and headed back to my room. As I walked into my room, I heard soft footsteps creeping back up the stairs, so I turned towards the stairs, still in my room, and watched as the figure peered around the wall towards me. As I saw it, it quickly jumped back and went running back down the stairs. This time, I heard faint child laughter. Still thinking it's my brother, I go downstairs to get him to bed. When I got downstairs and went to the room he's supposed to be in, he was sound asleep in the bed. It's at this point I hear faint laughter in the kitchen, near the stairs to the basement. Deciding I wasn't going to check it out because at this point I'm scared, I went back up to my room. I plugged my phone in and laid back down in my bed, and then when I looked up I saw the same black figure I'd seen the other 2 times peer into my room at me again. I quickly turned my bedside lamp on, and as I did, it ran back down the stairs laughing. I shut my door and slept with my lamp on that night. My dad no longer lives in that house, but to this day, both my dad and my stepmom don't believe me when I tell them this story. They push it off as my imagination, even though my stepmom and her mom both experienced things in that house with me. In 2010, my girlfriend and I moved into a rental apartment in Rotterdam. At the time, I was a hardcore skeptic. Ghosts, spirits, the paranormal? Nonsense. Or so I thought. The apartment had a strange attic, filled with forgotten belongings left by previous tenants. We put the washing machine up there, and used a nearby room as our bedroom. Another attic room we used for ironing. From the moment we moved in, my girlfriend said she felt something dark in the house. At night, she'd wake up and see a shadowy male figure standing at the foot of our bed. I shrugged it off. Probably just dreams, I told her. Then, things escalated. A friend of hers visited one day. She had no idea what my girlfriend had been experiencing, but out of nowhere, she said, "There's a man in this house. Something dark." That's when I started paying attention. One afternoon, my girlfriend was napping on the couch. Suddenly, she got up and began walking towards the attic. I followed, calling her name. She didn't respond. Her eyes were open, but it was like she was sleepwalking. Then, she suddenly came to and looked horrified. She told me she'd been dreaming of the same house, but back in the 1960s or 70s. In the dream, there were broken wine glasses on the floor, spilled drinks, and a woman screaming. She heard 2 angry male voices upstairs and felt someone was being attacked. She was about to go find out when I woke her. It was chilling for both of us. For a while, the weirdness stayed mostly with her, but everything changed when we began preparing to move out. One evening, I was lying in bed in the attic bedroom. I heard someone walking up the stairs. The light in the hall switched on. I assumed it was my girlfriend coming to say hi. I waited, but no one came. The sound stopped. Curious, I got up and opened the door. No one was there. I went downstairs. My girlfriend was sitting calmly in the living room. "Why didn't you come say hi?" I asked. She looked confused. "I didn't go upstairs. I thought you did." That moment hit me like a punch. I felt my entire body go cold. For the first time, I was truly afraid. She was so unsettled, she left to sleep at her mother's. I stayed. I refused to be chased out of my own place. That night, around 1 a.m., I was jolted awake by a knock. Not just any knock. It came from inside the wall, right next to my head. I'd lived there nearly 3 years. I knew every sound that house made. This was new and terrifying. I froze. I wanted to get up, but I couldn't move. I just pulled the blanket over my head and lay there, questioning everything I believed. What does this thing want from me? How is this even possible? From that night on, it only got worse. We began losing things, keys, personal items, only to have them reappear days later in plain sight. It was maddening. The presence wasn't just there anymore. It was interacting with us. We reached out to a psychic for help. By then, we were already sleeping elsewhere. She told us to return to the house and, with calm and kindness, guide the spirit towards the light. No fear, no hate, she said. Just tell it you can't help, and it needs to move on. We did as she instructed. That night, sitting in the attic, we gently spoke our words. And then, 3 thunderous bangs slammed into the attic door. It was violent, aggressive, terrifying. We bolted from the house. I swear something followed us in the car for a short while. We told the psychic. She simply said, "It's not going anywhere. Don't return at night." Soon after, we moved out. And from the moment we stopped sleeping there, the activity stopped. I went in a skeptic. I left knowing that something else exists. Something real. Something powerful. And it doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. When I was 12 years old, my sister rented a home in southern Maine. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but the things that happened in that house make it hard for me to say there is no such thing as a haunted house. It was called the Gold's House after the name of the family that built it, and I believe it was very old, probably around 150 years old by now. Lots of unsettling things happened in that house, but since I have a tendency to be long-winded, I will tell my scariest experience first. The man at the top of the stairs. At the time this all took place, I was going to a private school that was far from my home with my mother and brother. The school was closer to where my mother worked, and my sister's new home at the Golds. So that I wouldn't be left home alone after school, my mother would take a break from work to pick me up and then drop me off at my sister's until she finished work and could take me all the way home. However, with that timing, my sister would often be out with her daughter running errands. My mother would drop me off in the driveway, and I would head into the Golds to wait for my sister and niece to get home. On the night it happened, it was snowing heavily, working its way towards a moderate blizzard. As usual, my mother picked me up from school and drove me to the Gold's house. My sister's car wasn't in the driveway, so I knew I would be there alone. Not a prospect I was looking forward to, since creepy things had already happened there. My mother didn't drive away until I'd gotten through the front door. I was in the front hall, taking off my coat, when for some reason I decided to look up toward the top of the stairs that led to the second floor. There was a man standing at the top of the stairs looking down at me. The house was mostly dark, but there was a nightlight in the bathroom behind him, which perfectly outlined his silhouette. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there. I felt very afraid, but I called out for my sister's fiancé's name, as that would be the only ordinary explanation for who could be in the house. No answer. There was a moment, I don't know how long, where he and I just stood there looking at each other. I couldn't make out his face, but the physique looked masculine. He never said a word, but I could see his shoulders kind of rise with the sound of his breathing. I reached behind me, felt the doorknob, and that was it. I darted out of the house. I spent the next 15 or 20 minutes waiting at the edge of the driveway. I wanted to be far enough away that I had a head start to the neighbors if he came out, but I didn't want to go too far and miss the chance to warn my sister when she got home. It was miserable outside, but I remember thinking it didn't bother me one bit, as long as I wasn't back in that doorway. When my sister got home, I told her what was happening and we called the police from the neighbor's house. This was 1996, and we didn't have a cell phone. The cops searched the house, but found nobody. The thing is, I never took my eyes off the front of the house from the point I left until the police went in, and I never saw anybody leave. They could have gone out the window, true, but there were no footprints in the snow. From that point on, I wouldn't go back and insisted my mother let me wait in her car after she picked me up from school. I would just wait for her to finish work. Other stories. The little girl in the window. Before the story with the man at the top of the stairs, I was babysitting my niece one night when something else happened. My niece was in the living room and I was doing dishes in the kitchen. There was a window above the kitchen sink, and if it was dark enough outside, you could look at the window and see your own reflection, as well as the kitchen behind you. At one point, I saw a little girl walk behind me and go into the small guest room beside the kitchen. Thinking it was my niece, I turned around and went to get her out of there. We usually kept that door closed because there was heavy exercise equipment and things you didn't want kids messing with, but I had left it open for some reason. I went in and flipped on the light, but she wasn't there. I called her name, and she came walking in from the living room, asking me what I wanted. All the hairs of my body must have stood straight up. I think we spent the rest of that night in the living room, but I kept my back against the wall. Other things happened in that house. My sister fell down the stairs while holding my niece. She swears it felt like someone pushed her. I almost fell down those stairs myself. I was on the top step and felt my whole body start to stretch, pulling me up onto my tiptoes and then pitching forward. I had to grab the railings to keep myself from going down head first. One morning, my niece asked my sister, "Who are the ladies who come into my room at night to clean?" She said they were women in black dresses with white hats that went around her room at night, putting toys in piles and folding clothes or blankets. I had strange dreams in that house. I could write a whole post about them, but even the very first time I visited that house, something unnerving happened. I was outside while my sister was giving my mother a tour. I remember I was playing with a new toy gun I had that I thought was the greatest thing ever. I was out in the driveway, and all of a sudden this terrible fear came over me out of nowhere. It was like the feeling of being watched, but worse. I remember thinking, "Run. Run right now, as fast as you can." I did. I ran so fast I tripped over my own feet and still got up to run more. I ran screaming out to my mother and sister. I told them what was happening, but I think they just wrote it off as kids being kids. That place still scares me when I think of it. I've been reading a lot of scary stories lately, and it made me start thinking about some of my own paranormal experiences. This story is 100% true. Not a lot to it, but it is one of the most viscerally horrifying things that has ever happened to me. Back in 2016, I was in a long-term relationship with this girl whose family lived in a small town in Connecticut. We'd been dating for a little over a year, and had met her parents a few times, but this was our first time actually driving down and staying at her childhood home. I was already a little nervous about crashing with her parents and making a good impression, but she assured me everything would be fine. The whole drive down was incredibly scenic, and the town itself had the usual trappings of a cute colonial town. We pulled up to the place, and it's this beautiful old 3-story house, half sitting on a hill overlooking a big green yard. Her parents greeted us and were super welcoming, leading us into an open foyer with a dark wooden staircase. The house was clearly very old, but in a nice cozy sort of way. It had clearly been remodeled from those old New England homes with some slight modern touches. My girlfriend said we'd be sleeping in the guest room upstairs, because her childhood bedroom only had a single skinny bed. She made sure to qualify, though, that her house was sort of haunted, and the guest room is where most of the ghost activity had centered around. I asked her to clarify what that meant, and she said her brother had slept in the room a couple times, and that weird stuff had happened while he was in there. She didn't really elaborate any further, and in a way I could tell she was trying to downplay it, or not freak me out. She did say, though, that pretty much everyone in her family had one strange experience or another while living in the house. One day her dad was remodeling the kitchen when he was home alone working, and sat down to take a break. While he was sitting in silence drinking some water, he suddenly felt a strong hand grip his right shoulder from behind. He jumped out of his chair and looked around, but no one was there. He's a completely normal, non-superstitious guy, and when I asked him about it, he said he thought his spirit was trying to warn him not to make changes to the house. Another time, my girlfriend was home alone with her dog, watching TV downstairs, and all of a sudden she heard loud banging footsteps walking down the hall upstairs. As the footsteps continued down the hall, She could swear she heard someone banging on the walls, slowly approaching the top of the staircase. Her dog ran to the bottom of the stairs and started barking like crazy. She grabbed her phone, grabbed the dog, saw nothing at the top of the stairs, and ran outside. She called her parents and called the police while watching the house from a sidewalk a little ways away. From where she was situated, she could see both entrances to the house. The way the windows are set up, you couldn't jump out of a second-story window without breaking your legs. The police searched the place and found no one, and her family chalked it up to a ghost. There has also been some smaller spooky stuff that has happened, like their attic door closing on its own. Even if they put a chair in front of the door when they go up to get something, they'll come back down the stairs to find the door closed. For some reason that irked me the most, and I refused to go up there. Anyway, the actual experience I had was my first night staying there. We were settling down to go to bed in the guest room, and I remember being slightly bothered by the lighting in the room. It just felt off or slightly uncanny. It was both very bright and dim at the same time. I figured I was just tired, and we climbed into bed and slowly nodded off to sleep. Now I don't know if I was dreaming before this happened, but in the middle of me being asleep, a woman appeared in my dreams. She was violently angry and started addressing me directly. She showed me people in my life that I loved, my girlfriend, family, friends, and she started putting broken glass into their gums, scraping against their teeth. I was just frozen in the dream. I couldn't even react. She told me she was going to torture and kill everyone I cared about. She promised me that everything she was saying was very real. I tried to wake up and was mentally struggling against whatever grip she had on me, and for a second, I did wake up. I was in bed, sitting in the darkness, and then somehow the woman transmuted from the previous dream to this new one and screamed, "You will never escape!" I woke up for real this time, bolting upright, screaming and violently shaking. This woke my girlfriend up, and she immediately tried to calm me down, asking what was wrong. I started crying, trying to recount to her what had just happened and how viscerally real it was. She reassured me that it was just a dream, and I slowly started to calm down a little. I was genuinely afraid to go back to sleep, but we ended up somehow being able to nod back off, and I made it to the morning without any other incident. We stayed at the house in that room a couple more times over the years after that, and I never had a dream like that again. You could probably chalk it up to the power of suggestion, being in a new place, being told that the guest room had ghost activity, but that is the only time before or since that I've ever had a true night terror or woken up screaming. I have never had a dream that even approaches the level of intensity to that one. I honestly don't know what to make of it. It was probably just my brain freaking out. But as a first timer in that house, it felt like a warning. Hello everyone. I originally posted this story in another subreddit, but it's such a creepy experience that I wanted to share it here too. I'll do my best to give as much detail as possible. The house we lived in back then had its fair share of odd occurrences. But honestly, weird things have happened in every house we've ever lived in. To give some backstory, my parents have had paranormal experiences for many years, even before my siblings and I were born. At one point, my mom went through something terrifying. I was about 14 at the time. She used to wake up with scratches, bruises, bite marks, and objects thrown at her. It got so bad that the police once came because they thought my dad had hurt her, but he never would. Ever. She was really sick, bedridden, constantly seeing doctors who couldn't find anything wrong. She has diabetes and epilepsy, but neither explained why she kept getting bruises or struggled to walk. Eventually, my parents invited a medium to the house. I remember that moment so clearly. He walked in, looked around, sat down, talked to my mom, then closed his eyes. As soon as he did, every light in the house flickered for a while. Then he told her that a dark entity had attached itself to her. He described it exactly as she'd always seen it, a tall, black figure, a man with a veil covering his face. Then, in 2012, my sister passed away. After that, the attacks mostly stopped. Strange things still did happen now and then, but nothing as violent as before. My mom's health also took a better turn for the most part. She strongly believes my sister is protecting her now. Anyway, that's the quick backstory. Now onto one particular experience that has stuck with me. I've had quite a few unsettling encounters myself, and I might share more later, but this one haunts me the most. When I was around 21, I'm 28 now, everyone in my house was asleep. I've always been a night owl. I enjoy how peaceful the world feels at night, as if time is paused and I have complete freedom. I felt hungry, so I paused my video game and got up, when I suddenly got this eerie feeling. It's hard to describe, but I just felt something was off. I shrugged it off, patted my cat, opened my bedroom door, and stepped into the hallway. Our hallway was a straight path leading to a staircase at the end, which took you to the ground floor. Just days earlier, we had painted the stairs and walls white. They used to be a plain, old brown wood. As I walked down the creaky stairs, I remember getting annoyed at myself for being so loud, as I didn't want to wake anyone. Once I reached the ground floor, I opened the living room door. Our living room was fairly big. On the left, there was a door leading to the basement. Straight ahead was the kitchen, garden door, and bathroom. To the right were TV and couches, your standard family setup. I started making a chicken sandwich, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. All the lights were on, so I tried to ignore it. I put the chicken on a plate, grabbed it, and was about to head back upstairs, when suddenly, a feeling of fear hit me. I still get goosebumps every time I remember that moment. Panicked, I turned off the lights and shut the door, heart pounding for no reason I could understand. Then, a scream broke through the silence. It was loud, so loud, just a woman's scream, almost like a wail. It was as clear as day, as if she was right there in the living room. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could, completely terrified. The strangest part will always be that no one else in the house heard it. Just me. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe a pipe burst? Maybe a neighbor screamed? But neither explanation makes sense considering how loud and close by it was. Something I never mentioned before when telling this story. 2 weeks later, my mom's aunt passed away from old age. Was it a sign? Something else? I have no idea. But that memory is burned into my mind, and it still terrifies me to this day. About 6 to 7 months ago, my family moved to this house in Maine that was built in 1986. After we moved in, my mother became friends with the previous owners, a mother, father, and their son. Everything was fine for a while, but a month or two after moving in, things started getting weird. For context, my father and older brother go to work at roughly 6:30 p.m. and don't arrive until 3:30 to 4 a.m. Thus, me, my mother, and my younger sister are home alone until they arrive home. We have a basement in the living room that was recently renovated a few months before moving in, and there's 2 rooms down there. My older sisters, who moved out a few weeks before, and my older brothers. Usually, me and my mother go to sleep between 11:30 p.m. and 1 o'clock a.m., with my little sister going to bed a few hours earlier. So, my mom and I are mostly alone together in the living room. Our first little experiences were just hearing noises and small things in the basement, such as light footsteps and creaks. We thought nothing of it until it started getting worse. One day, I was in my room on my computer, headphones off. My mother was in the living room calling with her friends, and my little sister was asleep in the room next to me. Suddenly, I hear a loud groan, sounding like a girl's voice, in the bathroom right next to my room. At first, I'm like, "Girl, why are you groaning?" because I assumed it was my younger sister. A few minutes later, my mom walks into my room and asks if I had heard it too. I say yes, and she tells me that it was not my little sister. Immediately, I felt a pit in my stomach. My mother heard it behind her in the living room, yet I heard it in the bathroom. There were no animals in the house, and my mother's friends on the call heard it as well. We locked our bedroom doors that night. I covered mine with a dresser, and she made me sleep with a knife just in case. A few days after that, just before bed, my mother and I started hearing what sounded like talking and light footsteps downstairs. It sounded like a man. It got so bad that she made me go in her room with her with knives, since my room door didn't have a lock. The talking and footsteps got so loud that my mother called our dad and brother and made them come home early to check the house, in fear of a squatter or something else being in our basement. For a moment while we were waiting in bed, I heard a voice talking near the window. I thought my mom was on TikTok. My mother then turned to me and asked if I heard that, scared. When my father and brother came home, they found nothing. After that, I began hearing cluttering noises in my closet at night. I assumed it was the wind, although I was scared. The next day, my mother walked in my room in the morning and told me that she had spoken to the previous owners, who had lived there from 2012 to 2022, and the mother had told her about her son. Her son was about 8 to 10 years old, and his old room was my current room. The mother said that the son would talk to seemingly nothing, and said that he saw a boy in the closet. It turns out there was a young boy who died in the area and was following the son until they moved out. My mother said he now might be following me. Another time, I was in the kitchen at around 2 o'clock in the morning. Everyone is asleep, and I was about to do dishes. Before I started, I suddenly heard what sounded like a child crying. I immediately got worried because I thought it was my little sister, and I put my ear up to their bedroom door, but I heard no crying in there. I went back to the kitchen and heard it again, before it stopped. Another time was about a month later. I was on a call with my best friend. Keep in mind it was nighttime again, and I went to the kitchen to grab some dinner. I came back with my plate, and my friend asked me what I was eating, and right when I responded, she was like, Wait, stop. What was that? What, was that you? It turns out she had heard a low hum as I was speaking, and I did not hear anything. She said she heard it on the call at the same time I was speaking, so it couldn't have been me. This was my last experience, and most recent. I was walking downstairs to grab something from my brother's room in the basement, and as I was walking up the stairs, on the last few steps, I heard what sounded like a woman humming for almost 2 seconds. As I walked into the living room, I looked at my mom on the couch, and I was like, What the heck, Mom? You scared me so much. And she said, What? She sounded confused, and I told her I heard her hum, and she confusedly denied it. We asked my little sister, but she also denied it. I immediately called my best friend to tell her what had happened, and as I was explaining, my mother was leaning over the stairs before yelling, I just heard it! My mom sounded genuinely both afraid and shocked. I could barely sleep that night. We have since moved out a few weeks after that last experience. We haven't experienced a single thing since then in our new house. I always used to wish to experience something paranormal, but after months of living there, I am grateful that it's over. It made us feel scared and not safe, especially with my father and brother gone every night, barely believing us when we told them about it. Sorry if this doesn't make much sense. I just wanted to document before I forget. To give a bit of context, my grandparents used to live in this big old house in the south of England from the 1970s to the 1990s when they died. The house was built in the 1700s. When my grandparents died, ownership of the house was jointly given to my dad and his sister. They renovated it and used it as a wedding function type of place. Sometimes guests would hold their wedding there and leave the same night. Other times the wedding party would stay in the renovated bedrooms on the first floor and leave the next day. It's got about 10 bedrooms on the first floor, but a further 20 or so on the second floor, back from when all the servants working in the house back in the old days would have lived up there. The second floor hadn't been touched in all the time it's been in our family. I went up there exploring one time when I came to visit my grandparents when I was little. Just room upon empty room, no wallpaper, and bare floorboards. So, on to the first thing that happened in this house. Once the house had been renovated and was being used for weddings, my dad gave a job to my uncle, my mom's brother, to be a handyman of sorts for the house, doing repairs as and when they were needed. One of his jobs was to go down to the house and unlock the main front door first thing in the morning whenever there was going to be a wedding. On the times when there would be no one staying the night, he was to go back down there around midnight and then wait around for the wedding to be over so that he could check that everyone had left and then lock up. One night, he was waiting outside for the last guest to leave, and once they had, he did a quick tour of the house, checking all the rooms just in case there were stragglers. He then stacked up all the chairs from where this evening's dinner had been held, turned off all the lights, and then left and locked up. As he was walking to the car, he heard an almighty crash from inside the house. He assumed that the stacked chairs had fallen over, so he turned and ran back. As he got to the front door, he could hear a piano that was in one of the ground floor rooms being played in a way that wasn't any recognizable tune, more like someone randomly hitting the keys. He panicked and assumed he had locked someone in. Once he was back in and turned all the lights back on, The chairs were all where he had left them, stacked up, and there was no one in the house, despite him doing repeated walkthroughs, shouting at the top of his lungs for whoever was still in there to come out. After half an hour, he gave up and left. He laughs about it if you mention it now, but he does say that at the time he was terrified, as there was nothing that could have accounted for the crashing noise, or for how the piano was being played on its own. After a couple of years, the wedding business dried up, and the house stood empty. We were in the middle of moving house, and after the sale of our old house was agreed and a date to move out was set, the purchase of our new house fell through, so we were in a position of still needing to get out of our old house, but we had nowhere to go. My dad's solution was for us to go live in my grandparents' old house until we could find a new house, and we were there from July 2001 through till February 2002. The way that the house is arranged, the front door is at one end of the house, and the stairs are at the other end. A long corridor runs from the front door to the stairs, with all the main function rooms coming off this main corridor. At the top of the stairs on the first floor, you had 4 bedrooms all arranged around the landing, and then a long hallway running down the length of the house, with 3 bedrooms on either side of it. My parents and my 2 brothers all picked rooms that were accessed from the first floor landing. Me, in my late teen wisdom, picked a bedroom right at the end of the hallway, on the other side of the house, on the left-hand side, so I was quite a ways away from everyone else each night. When you climb the stairs and reach the landing on the first floor, the stairs loop around to the left and go up to the second floor, but the staircase shrinks down width-wise. From the ground floor to the first floor, the stairs are really wide, so that at least 5 people could stand shoulder to shoulder on the stairs and still have room. But the stairs from the first floor to the second floor are really narrow, just over 1 person's width, with the door at the top which is always kept closed and locked. I would always stay up pretty late browsing the net downstairs. Back in those days, we only had 1 PC down in the study room that we all had to share, and as I was the oldest, I would be the last in the chain for use. My youngest brother would use it first in the early evening for an hour or 2, and then my middle brother until his bedtime, and then me last, hence me always being late to bed. One night, it must have been 1:30 or thereabouts, I turned off the PC and went up to bed. At that hour, all the other lights in the house would be off, and I would make my way upstairs in the dark. The narrow stairway from the first floor landing up to the second floor was always dark, just a black void, and I always avoided looking up there. So this night, I climb up the stairs, and the house is silent. Everyone else is asleep. Once I am on the landing on the first floor, I hear footsteps above me coming from the second floor, keeping pace with mine, as I make my way down towards my room. I stop, cursing myself at the sound coming from above me, but they carry on walking down the corridor in the direction towards the other side of the house. When they get to a position roughly where the door to my room is, I hear this almighty bang, like a door being slammed shut. I am not ashamed to say that I sprinted down my hallway, jumped into bed, and put my CD Walkman on. I hid under the covers. Just thinking about it now gives me goosebumps again. I must have lay there for at least an hour. The CD I had on came to an end, and I lay there listening for any noise. I couldn't hear anything at all, and eventually I drifted off. The next day I asked my parents and brothers if they heard anything during the night, but none of them did. It was only then that I told them what had happened. My dad and I went up to the second floor and couldn't find any signs of disturbance. All the doors, apart from the one at the top of the stairs which we always kept shut and locked, were fully open. Another time, my mum was alone in the house. There's a small storeroom opposite of my bedroom that my mum would always keep all the spare bed sheets and towels in. One day she was in there putting bits away, and she felt a hand grip her shoulder lightly and a female voice say, "Hello?" She turned, but no one was there. She ran out and didn't use the room anymore. My dad had to go in there and get all the sheets and towels out, then lock the door, and my mom used a different room for storage from then on. Nothing else happened while we were there, but I hated that house. Luckily, we were not there for very long. A few years after we moved out, my aunt, her husband, and their 2 girls moved in. They all still lived there. The girls were about 4 when they moved in, and they had the same bedrooms as my brothers had when we lived there. After a year of being there, my dad came home one day and told us that my aunt had called him up to tell him that one of the girls kept waking up in the night with bad dreams, and would come and get into bed with my aunt and uncle. This carried on for about 2 weeks, until one night she woke up screaming. My aunt came running into her room and tried to settle her. After a while, the screams eased to just sobbing, and my aunt asked her what the bad dream was about. My cousin said that there was an old lady who kept waking her up, whispering to her and scaring her. When my aunt asked her what old lady she was talking about, my cousin pointed to the corner of the room behind my aunt and said, "That one over there." My aunt turned to look, and there was no one there, but was sufficiently creeped out to move my cousin into another room the next day, and since then there's been no further activity that I am aware of.